It's the Fightful MMA Holy Smokes podcast with Showdown Joe and Sean Ross Sapp.
We are presumably live.
What's going on, everybody? Showdown Joe here. Joe Ferraro alongside Sean Ross Sapp for this week's Holy Smokes podcast. And my goodness, do we have lots to discuss, lots to recap, lots to dissect. Give us a follow at Showdown Joe for yours truly, at Sean Ross Sapp for my wonderful co-host, managing editor of Fightful. Make sure you give us a follow at Fightful MMA on social media, at Fightful Online on Instagram. A lot of crazy stuff going on there. But we're going to hear from Chael Sonnen a little bit later on the show here to discuss a variety of things. James Lynch had a chance to catch up with him. He also caught up with Cyborg Santos. If you didn't have a chance to see that, make sure you get over to FightfulMMA.com to check out those two interviews amongst many that James Lynch continues to pop up on the site. We're going to recap UFC St. Louis and all the stories around that. Uriah Hall having to pull out the different results that occurred. Robert Whittaker is out. Yoel Romero replaces him. He'll take on Luke Rockhold. We're going to break down UFC 220. The fight for the baddest man on the planet will headline that event. And yours truly will be joining Sean Ross Sapp on Saturday after that event. So we'll also talk Bellator 192, get some predictions from fighters. Douglas Lima taking on Rory MacDonald. Who am I picking? Who is Sean picking? Who are others picking? Lots to discuss, man. Sean, Ross, Sapp, look at that head. How are you, sir?
Beautiful. Wish our stream would kick off on YouTube, but we're going to operate as if it's running anyway because it always ends up doing that. It goes somewhere. Where it goes, I don't know, but eventually it'll pop up on there. Yeah, we got a lot to talk about, man. There are two events this weekend. You actually will be joining me for 220, yeah?
I believe so. Isn't that what we're talking about Saturday?
Yes. And Bellator 192 this weekend as well. What do you think of Bellator going head-to-head with UFC?
I don't think that was their plan originally. I think they'd already booked this card long before UFC 220 even remotely had a main event. So I don't blame them, and I'm sure they're not overly happy with the fact that, oh, come on, Miocic Ngannou this weekend. So
Which I'm being from the numbers that I'm picking up, Joe, and I take a look at a lot of things. I take a look at like weigh-in numbers, face-off numbers, press conference numbers. UFC posts extended previews inside the octagons and countdowns and stuff. And based on the numbers that I've seen on some of these, there are some very, very good-looking numbers for the UFC compared to some of the stuff that they've done in the past on this show. And it is very much a two-fight show. So I really hope that none of these top two fights, pull out. And Joe, my God, like I sang the praises of the way that UFC shows were booked last year about how strong so many of the undercards are. That is not the case with a lot of these shows that are coming up.
This is definitely a situation, in my opinion, when you look at the actual funds that need to be allocated for the main event and the co-main event, that everyone else underneath doesn't necessarily get paid. So it is top two heavy fight, Miocic, Ngannou, Cormier, Oezdemir. Other than that, you can go up and down the card. They're mainly names that you and I and hardcore fans know. I don't know that anyone in the mainstream knows. Maybe they might know John Vellante. They may have a recollection of Thomas Almeida. But other than that, I mean, Dustin Ortiz is on the card. But yeah, and of course your ladies are on the Fight Pass. But I digress.
Yeah, your top 15 lady is on Fight Pass, and you have a few ranked people. It's just not a great card below that, and there's something to be said about Bellator. I think they're starting a little bit earlier. Probably a good idea. If I were them, I would have both of my main event fights done by the time that Daniel Cormier walks out to that cage.
That right there is intelligent production. That's a guy that's been around the game, ladies and gentlemen. Sean Ross Sapp understands the importance of hey, you want to go head-to-head is one thing, but let's get our stuff done before we lose viewership.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, there's a lot being made about Douglas Lima and Rory MacDonald not headlining. I'm wondering if that was a strategic thing, so this would happen. Like, people would tune in to watch Rory MacDonald and Douglas Lima, because that is a high-level fight. That is as good of a fight as Bellator is going to put on. And here's the thing, though. Like, I often talk about how bad some of these headliners are. There is no reason for Lorenz Larkin coming off of a loss and Fernando Gonzalez to headline a Bellator show 1 week after Rory MacDonald and Douglas Lima don't headline a Bellator show.
Yeah, I'm just looking at someone that's sending a message to me for the show, but it's irrelevant at this point. Yeah, yeah, you're bang on. I mean, when you take a look at exactly how it's been structured, how it's been put together, I mean, it's strategic, but it's not, right? The Bellator card has 3 fights that are fantastic at minimum. Even Pico taking on Christian is going to be a good fight as well. But Michael Chandler coming back against Yamaguchi, or is it Yamuchi? Yamuchi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bellator has a good enough roster to where they don't have to do this. So, my God, man. But there was a lot of stuff that happened. Uriah Hall got pulled, and Dana White just went in on him. And my God, if this wasn't the thing that we've just said, where is Uriah Hall's head at? How serious is he? Can he ever pull the trigger? Dana White went in on him, saying he doesn't take it seriously. He has unlimited potential, did have unlimited potential, and just pisses it away.
It's extremely unfortunate. I mean, I mean, we're never really going to know the full true story as to what happened, but at some point, is it bad luck? Is it mismanagement? Is it poor overall planning? Something's got to give here, because there are so many different, I guess, attributes and intangibles that constantly prevent Uriah Hall from being what many of us thought was going to be a serious contender at 185 pounds. I know we're looking at his stint on The Ultimate Fighter and what we expected, and if I'm not mistaken, you called it a dud, to put it nicely, against Kelvin Gastelum in the finale, and that was the eye-opener. I mean, realistically speaking, the original eye-opener for Uriah Hall was on the Ultimate Fighter show when Chael Sonnen, when they broadcast the fact that Chael Sonnen was like, look, man, it's all up here, it's all mental for you, you got to get over the hump, and there's your first clue, your first example regarding Uriah. I can tell you on a personal level, and I've told the story before on this podcast, of my experience with Uriah Hall and how I think he's a fantastic guy, and then after the interview was done with Sportsnet, we kind of had a personal conversation about being mentally strong and what it takes, and information that I got from the likes of from Faraz Zahabi, George St. Pierre, Randy Couture, and how they told me that they would deal with fight night jitters and preparation jitters, and Randy Couture taking on Brock Lesnar, and Brock Lesnar, and he told me that after the fight he had those go gadget arms that just you couldn't figure out how far his jab was because his arms were so long, but he dealt with it. So with Uriah Hall going through this now, and constantly, you never know. We talked about it on the last show, and even before, it was just like we never really know which Uriah Hall is going to show up. And this time around, he didn't even show up. He couldn't even, cut the weight properly. So I feel bad for the guy. I think he's just a genuine human being, so nice. But what do you do, Sean?
It's such a thing. It's like one of those, you watch him fight and you can diagnose him right there, based on how he fights. Unbelievable. Kamaru Usman, yeah boy. What was up with that post-fight interview? He should have just went full heel and said that his 30% is better than 100% that anybody in the audience could give. Did he leave his charger at home? Like, is the Bluetooth on? Because I liked his performance. He wrestled. You're not going to stand and strike with Imaya Weber-Mech. You're just not. And people who were like, oh, yeah, he needs to slug him and knock him out on the feet. No, that's not going to happen. Now, could he have finished him on the ground? I would have liked to have seen more of that, because he was even getting torn up with some elbows there. But
I was thinking of you when those elbows were being thrown and cut up Kamaru.
I believe he was on 30%, because he definitely turned himself on airplane mode and just cruised along.
Okay, so I'll kind of give you a little bit of insight, and I don't know what it is about Kamaru. Kamaru is, every time I see him at Titan events, every time we call a show, he's either sick the day of, or he's getting over a sickness. Now, let's not forget, these they're human beings like you and I and everyone watching and listening into the show, and what they put their bodies through is way more than 99% of the audience that tunes in to see us. So they need to definitely have the right amount of recuperation, number one, for rest, number two, nutrients in their body. And I talked to him about what I do, because I used to travel so much, and I'd get sick, I'd still work out, nowhere near on their level, don't get me wrong, but I was it was Jonathan. Remember Jonathan Chamberlain?
I do.
Yeah, so Jonathan Chamber was the one that, when he was working with the team over at TriStar, would ensure, he told Brendan Schaub this, George St. Pierre, he told anyone and everyone, Rashad Evans back in the day, oil of oregano, extremely important. Your greens mix, extremely important. And I'm a huge fan of what's called, I don't know if you guys have it down there, it's called Emergency.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a little packet, tear it up, put it in cold water, stir it up. Me, myself, I put 5 drops of oil of oregano to ensure it tastes like absolute crap. Stir that bitch up, swallow it, and you're good to go. You're good. I have that every Friday because I don't work out Saturdays and Sundays, Sean. So as anyone that knows me well enough, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday,
By my desk.
Yeah. So I work out 5 days a week. Again, nowhere near what those guys go through. Like not even, I don't know, 30%. Oh, there's an irony. There's some coincidental comment right there. But yeah, but at the end of the week, definitely I'll take my Emergency and oil of oregano. And if my son, who's 7 years old, they get sick all the time. For those that are parents, they understand they get sick. I catch him with a stuffy nose. I catch him with anything that I see that he's catching a cold. Boom. That same day, Emergency and oil of oregano. So with Kamaru, what I told him was to do, just give it a shot. Give it a shot. Don't gotta take it every day if you don't want to, but every other day it boosts your immune system. So in that post-fight interview, first of all, I'm watching the fight with Emil, and I'm thinking to myself, Jesus, is Emil huge. This guy's a monster at 170 pounds. I didn't think he was that big, but he's a big, big boy, and Kamaru had to do what he had to do. At the same time, it didn't look like what I envisioned a fight for Kamaru Usman. So I'm thinking something's got to be going on here. Other than that, he got rocked early, and he's just, cruising to that victory, just using his wrestling to win. Well, lo and behold, in that post-fight interview, he says he was sick. He says he was at 30%. Thought to myself, not surprised. I know the guy. I'm not surprised he's ill.
Yeah, I just think it's a very Tito Ortiz thing to do, to say, I'm at 30%. He was already getting booed. He should have healed the shit out of them. And he did a little bit. He did a little bit. So
go on. I want to ask you about that for sure. Go ahead.
No, go on.
So the moment I started hearing the boos, okay, that's what happened with Rashad Evans. That's what happened with Daniel Cormier. As soon as that post-fight interview, the very first post-fight interview that they went through where they started getting booed, that was pretty much it for their careers in terms of being the good guy. They were heels moving forward. Two of the most amazing dudes you'll ever meet, nicest guys you'll ever meet, their fan base just boos them. Can't stand them, boos them for whatever reason. And at that very moment, as Kamaru's doing his interview, he starts getting booed. I thought, oh my God, Sean Ross Sapp's going to look at this and probably bite it and just go crazy with it, because now I think Kamaru's going to be booed with anything and everything he does, except when he fights Colby Covington.
So there's room for more than one heel in this welterweight division. Like
apparently.
Tyron Woodley's there. Like Tyron Woodley's thing is he thinks that nobody respects him. But the reason why maybe he's lacking respect is because he always does do that. Like he always acts like there's some conspiracy against him. There's really not. Colby Covington is just a super heel. Kamaru Usman can do that too. When you're in a division, here are the guys on the outside looking in, Joe, of this division. Stephen Thompson, Robbie Lawler, Damian Maia, Donald Cerrone, George Masvidal. That's on the outside looking in. Guys on the come up are Dos Anjos, Covington, Teal, Ponzinibbio, Usman. I've never seen a welterweight division like this ever in the history of ever. There's room for him to do this, because if I'm the UFC, I put him against Maia, straight up. And I know Maia's coming off a loss, but here's the thing. Either Usman is going to knock him out on the feet, or Damian Maia is going to submit him, or along the way, we're going to find out that Kamaru Usman's wrestling is so good that it can just stop Damian Maia on the ground. And if that's the case, hey man, what can you do about that? Also, speaking of the welterweight division, now I have been very outspoken about Matt Hughes, and especially his book, where it kind of exposed him to be questionable at best. Definitely check out Sean McCorkle's review of that book. It was unbelievable. But the moment that they had at UFC St. Louis when they brought him out to the cage, that was very emotional. That was very great. Regardless of what I think about some of the stuff that he put in that book, oh my God, man. It still hurt me to see him limp out to the cage like that.
Yeah, yeah, and I've had my ups and downs with Matt Hughes. Thankfully, it's been all cleared, and every time we do see each other, it's just swapping stories of wives and kids and stuff like that. He's a guy that would always speak his mind, and whether you liked it or not, he didn't really care. I mean, he literally, in my opinion, back in the day, would walk around as I am the baddest man on the planet. At the very least, I'm the baddest 170-pound on the planet. I can kick everyone's ass in the room, so I can say whatever I want, do whatever I want. That was the vibe he had back in the day. And then even in leading up to some of his fights and doing some of the interviews, it was a bit of a challenge. As time went on, as you get older, you get humbled. And Matt, I saw a little bit of a change in Matt, especially as his career started unwinding and when he actually retired. Then I started doing some appearances with him, hosting some appearances with him when the UFC came to Canada, and just thought this guy's just a completely different person, just such a nice guy now. Everything is cool. So everything was great. And whenever we would see each other, hey, how you doing? How's this? How's that? Blah, blah, like I mentioned earlier. And then when I got the news that, his pickup truck got hit by a train, I reached out to Frank Trigg right away to say, dude, what did you hear? What else do you know? Blah, blah, blah. And he's, I don't know what's going on. So we were kind of going back and forth. You automatically feel for the guy. And the first thing I said with the very first podcast afterwards, with you and I said crystal clear. I said the day that he comes back, the UFC will honor him. And yes, they'll do. I didn't think they would make him walk to the cage, but they would do something. I think I did mention something like Royce Gracie, and when BJ Penn returned, they'll do something special. And I guarantee you, it'll be emotional for at least me. And I'll tell you, I watched that, Sean, and I was fighting back tears, man. I was like, damn, this human being's alive. Forget Matt Hughes, he's alive. And he's, you see the pain that he's going through, and he's not 100% who he was before, but just so glad that he's getting there. He's getting okay.
Yeah, it's sad, man, because this is a guy who was toying with the idea of fighting again in Bellator. Like, he was throwing it out there, like, maybe I'll do it, all that stuff. Obviously, that's never going to happen now, and that's a shame. But glad to see the UFC honor him. Overall, I just thought that UFC St. Louis card, and it had 2 fights pull out of it. It just had such a complete absence of stakes on it, essentially.
Yeah.
My lasting impression of that entire show was really, wow, Paige Van Zant's tougher than I even gave her credit for. Now, I don't think she's evolved enough in recent years, but I think that her ability to adapt in that 3rd round was kind of impressive because she didn't throw a right hand that whole time and she switched it up with kicks and stuff. Now, had she done that from the beginning and not left her feet 4 times in the first minute while she was trying to strike, maybe that fight would have been. Maybe that fight would have been
too many
different.
times. Yeah, she threw that too many times.
It was such a 23-year-old thing to do. Like, that's the situation. But that was my lasting impression of that show. And Vitor turned down a replacement fight. Dana White didn't specify with who, but said that he was offered a fight in Boston, offered another fight later on, turned it down.
He wants Bisping.
He wants Bisping, and Bisping doesn't want him. But I think that, and I can't blame Bisping. Bisping spent years of his career fighting people who were on TRT and steroids. So I can't blame Michael Bisping. Just like, nowadays, I used to look at George St. Pierre. I thought he was making excuses to not fight Anderson Silva. Nowadays, I don't think he was making excuses. I think he was completely justified in his reasons for not wanting to. So we'll see where that goes as well. My God. So there's the Uriah Hall thing. He passes out, I guess, or his body's shut down. This upcoming Bellator show is taking place in California. I spoke to Georgie Karakanyan about some of the recommended weight class changes and things like that. And boy, was he outspoken. Take a listen. I know you fought in California a lot, and their athletic commission is doing a thing where they'll recommend that a fighter jump up a division if they don't meet certain criteria. What do you think of that? Do you think that's a fair thing for a commission to be doing, or what do you take out of that?
I think the commission is just broke, and they're trying to find any way they could do to get money, and I think it's fucking stupid. For the next week, they want us to show up at 157.5, and the day of the fight, you can't be over 160.5. And if you go over that, they try to recommend you. But, really, I'm going to listen to the commission guy that never fought in his life, doesn't know how to fucking cut weight, and he's going to recommend me. So I'm just going to tell him fuck off.
So yeah, that's not like it's not like they're not finding you or anything. It's just them publicly like wagging their finger at you. Yeah.
Yeah, my friend Cub just fought Brian Ortega, and he was telling me, I guess they're very annoying. They just follow you everywhere. They make you step on a scale. So, and I'm in a fight week. Ask any fighter. If someone annoys you, it's pretty annoying, because you're cutting weight and you're not in a good mood. So I hope they know how to eat, and I hope they don't get bitch slapped.
So Georgie Karakanyan saying is, quote, fucking stupid. Like, here's the thing, Joe. Like, Dan or CJ at Bellator, their PR guys, will always hit me up, and they're like, who do you want? Who do you want? If I ever get Kendall Grove or Georgie Karakanyan offered to me, I take them.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to – there's no filter there. And, at one point, I'm pretty sure Georgie Karakanyan told me he wanted to kill Bubba Jenkins. May have helped kill his career, but it didn't kill him necessarily. But that Bellator show this weekend is a nice one. Aaron Pico versus Shane Crutchton. That kicks off the program. We'll go ahead and preview this show before we talk about UFC stuff. Aaron Pico, we have an interview with him on Fightful.com. Trained with, I'll have to go look it up. Spaced out for a second. He's been training with high-level boxers. Of course, he's got that great wrestling background. He's dipping his toes in a little bit of everything. Shane Crutchton is a guy that I know because I did a long-form feature on him. If you guys like the ones I did on Gerald Harris, The Brawl for All, NWA, Muhammad Hassan, any of those, I did a great one on Shane Crutchton in December 2016 ahead of his World Series of Fighting fight. This is not an easy fight for Aaron Pico. Like, this could be the same situation that they ran into with Zach Freeman, Joe.
Very dangerous. Very dangerous. I mean, Pico's will still have that label. It's not as hot as it was before. Obviously, he makes his debut, and we naturally thought he was going to destroy Freeman, or most people thought he was going to destroy Freeman. And Freeman, had 24 seconds or so to choke him out. That kind of halted the train. But then, he comes back against Justin Lin, and Pico does a fantastic job in that fight there. Didn't last the full round, but showcased what we thought he was going to showcase. Did a great job, right? Was smart. But he's not getting easy fights. Maybe not be a name that people recognize, but he's not getting easy fights. Now, if he does get past him, he's supposed to, Sean. He's supposed to. That's a
good point. And the name that had escaped me was Miguel Cotto. My God, he's been training. He had trained with Miguel Cotto ahead of Cotto's last two fights. So that is going to be a good one. Georgie Karakanyan takes on Henry Corrales. Karakanyan can really push himself up further in the division with that one. Then it gets into fights, and I'm like, why isn't Michael Chandler versus Yamuchi headlining the next week's show?
Yeah, that's a main event fight.
That is a main event fight, man. Chandler might lose this, Joe, and a lot of people don't even have any clue who Yamuchi is. But he's been in Bellator for 4 years, and he's I think he's 7-2. He's beaten Ryan Couture, Piccolotti, and he's beaten Mike Rickman, Saul Almeida, Martin Stapleton. He's beaten some decent fighters. So he is one that, if he beats Michael Chandler, title shot for this man.
If he doesn't get a title shot after defeating Chandler, I don't know what Bellator is doing at 155. Forget about heavyweight. But at 155, I mean, the guy's fantastic. I mean, he's unreal. Right? You beat Chandler, you're damn freaking good. This could be, well, I shouldn't say it's going to be the fight of the night because you got the co-main event, which is what we're all looking forward to. Chandler's going to have his hands full. He knows it. If he has any sort of arrogance about him and thinks he doesn't, he'll get finished. He needs to be careful. But I think Chandler, we all know what he wants to do with Primus and stuff like that. So it's a matter of Yamuchi first, Primus next. Right? But either way, the winner of this fight gets a title shot. If it doesn't happen, oh man, come on, guys at Bellator, let's smarten up here.
Well, the thing is, Primus seems to think that Chandler's just trying to fight out his contract and move on to the UFC. That's what Primus thinks. Chandler's told me that he's open to facing or moving up to 170 in the future, so that's something to keep your eye on. Then we have, I'm going to cover I guess I'll cover them in order. Douglas Lima, Rory MacDonald. You've covered that Canadian MMA scene for quite a while. This is a welterweight championship match. It was really the fight that they were trying to get to begin with when they signed Rory MacDonald. What are you looking for out of this, man? Because Douglas Lima is that guy. If he moved into that crowded Bellator or UFC welterweight division, he's a top 5, top 7 guy. And he's beaten Lorenz Larkin, Koreshkov, and Paul Daly back to back to back. It doesn't get much tougher than that, Joe. Well,
it does on Saturday, or it does now.
Well, yeah. This may be the toughest 4-fight streak of anybody in Bellator history.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy for Douglas. I mean, before I get to that, I just want to know if the peeps over at Wirecast can do different things about changing color, because I'm looking at your look and my look. I look like Casper the Friendly Ghost. And if anyone is over on my Instagram and sees the picture I posted literally minutes before we went live, you can see my true skin color and not Casper the Friendly Ghost. Sean right now looks like he's blurred out, but the picture I have of Sean in front of me right now is crystal clear, although those locks are funny. But hey,
it's
you
all
guys,
Wirecast, man.
Yeah, come on, Wirecast, step up. Rory MacDonald, Douglas Lima. This is the main event fight. Should be the main event. We all know that. Take nothing away from Chael and Quinton, which we'll get to momentarily. But I don't know what. I mean, it's going to sound crazy to most people. I'm rooting for Douglas Lima. Really, really am.
Really?
Yeah. People think, oh, Rory MacDonald's Canadian and blah. Nah, it doesn't matter.
Any reason for that?
I like Douglas Lima, man. Him and Diego are just $1 million. They're worth their weight in gold, both of them. Absolutely love those guys. I love the way Douglas fights. Very humble. And he kind of reminds me of Horiguchi in Japan, when Horiguchi had Manel Cape just pa 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 pa, and Horiguchi's like, okay, yep, you'll see. It's a lesson I learned a very long, well, I should say very long time ago. UFC 129, GSP Jake Shields, and interviewing Jake Shields and how humble he was and how nice he was, and George saying, this is the guy that I've been the most scared of my whole career. He goes, it's not the loud talkers, the Diaz's or the Frank Triggs back then, blah, blah. He was never worried about those guys. What he was worried about was the guys that were always quiet, humble, and silent, because that shows the epitome of confidence. No arrogance about Douglas Lima, in my opinion. So I'm a huge fan of both Lima brothers. I'm a huge fan of Douglas Lima, but he's going to have his hands full with Rory MacDonald. I mean, Rory MacDonald technically is a killer. He's been in there with the best of the best of the best pretty much over his career, and he's looking to make an example of Douglas Lima and show that he's the best welterweight outside of the UFC. Douglas Lima with a win here, ooh, buddy. Oh, buddy.
Yeah, there's not a lot that Douglas Lima hasn't seen. He's seen the striking ability of Paul Daly. He's seen a bit of an all-around game in Koreshkov. He's seen a guy walk over from the UFC top 5, top 10 in Lorenz Larkin. He's seen the wrestling of Ben Askren, and it got the better of him as well. He's seen the pace and the brawling of a Matt Brown, the jiu-jitsu of Ben Saunders. So, I mean, he's been around the block. Like, just because a lot of people are kind of learning his name, he's fought 35 times. Again, and I always say this for guys that have fought this long, that we know of. That's just on the record, man. Like, who knows how many that he may have done that we don't have a record of. And Rory MacDonald, like, it's like I've mentioned before, for so long he was the potential, the future. He's at 28 years old. This is the time now. It's not the future anymore. I remember back in the day, Melvin Guillard said, I'm not worried about winning a title. I'll win it when I'm 33. Well, now, with all due respect to Melvin Guillard, he's at like 33 or 34, and he's fighting every other week to get a paycheck.
Yeah.
Rory
I
MacDonald,
remember,
Rory is not that far. He's like 3.5 years removed from beating Tyron Woodley and beating Damian Maia and beating Nate Diaz, BJ Penn, those types of guys. Now, BJ Penn isn't what he once was or anything like that, but this is about as high level of a fight as Bellator can put on, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic fight. Again, I know I said I'm rooting for Douglas Lima to win this fight. Technically speaking, he can do it. He can do it. Mentally speaking, if he goes into this fight clear-headed, not arrogant, not afraid, I think he pulls off the victory.
So this fight, like, I think a lot of it's going to come down to reach, distance, and things like that. Because I mean, Rory MacDonald is a big welterweight, and he's got he's got a 5-inch reach advantage on Douglas Lima. And we've seen Rory MacDonald's willingness to go out there and play the distance game. He's kind of said that he doesn't really want to do that in Bellator. And, you know, this is more, the Bellator paychecks are more of a sure thing for him. They're going to push Rory MacDonald no matter what. They've got an investment in him. But enough of our predictions. Let's hear what the pros think about MacDonald and Lima.
I have no idea how Douglas Lima isn't one of the biggest stars in this sport. He's good looking, he's the right age, he's tougher than hell. Bellator's used him for 2 years as a highlight reel for his knockouts and finishes. You know, Larkin was supposed to come out there and starch him. He proved that he can go 5 rounds. He won that contest. I mean, he's really special. I don't have to tell you how good Rory MacDonald is. I mean, Rory MacDonald is nasty. George St. Pierre himself has been on record many times saying, you know, if this guy's not the best in the world, if you're going to say I'm the best, let me tell you this guy's the second best. When George St. Pierre says it, it matters. George isn't Mr. Compliment towards other people, but he says Rory's the man. And I don't know who's going to win that fight. I mean, Rory is really special. It's just I would like that we could all agree. All the media, we at least in sportsmanship agree. If Douglas wins this fight, we give him his due because he's earned it. He's been the champion for a very long time, and for some reason, he just hasn't sparked that imagination, and we haven't really given the credit to him that he deserves. So I'll leave it at that. I'll let those two guys go figure it out. But I know people think Rory's going to win. I'll tell you that Douglas is a lot bigger than Rory. He's a lot bigger than most people know. He walks around at almost 215 pounds. He's very lean. I think he really should be a middleweight, but you know, he's got the belt at welterweight. He's got the contract at welterweight, so he honors it. And he's got a way to go in this fight. I don't think he's just going to get steamrolled like a lot of people think. He's the champ, and he's the champ for a reason.
You know, I'm going to stick with Douglas, but don't get me wrong. I think Rory is going to stand with them a little bit and go for a takedown. And in the past, it's been a weakness of Douglas Lima, the takedowns. But I feel like he's defense. Douglas Lima's defense is really good, and he throws everything power. So I don't want Rory to beat my ass listening to this or hear this, but I'm a fan of both fighters. But I think decision Douglas Lima.
I think Douglas Lima. Honestly, I just have that feeling. I think he's a tough guy. Obviously, Rory's a very tough guy too. But I think a lot of people underestimate that they can just come into Bellator and they think like coming from the other organization that they can just walk through Bellator. A lot of guys that come from the other organization that come to Bellator, some of them don't even win. I mean, Bellator's got a tough roster, especially at the 170-pound division. Lima's been a champion, so he's a gamer. I mean, I think it's going to be a great fight, but I think Lima will win. And but we'll have to see. It's MMA. All the crazy stuff happens in this sport, so we'll see. But I'm predicting Lima.
I really want Lima to win because that's the guy that's been the champion, and you know I have a lot of respect for him. That's who I want to win, but I really do see MacDonald getting the win. I think he's going to do the very same thing that he did at Daly. He won't take too many strikes on the stand-up where he feels that it's more fair or more even. He's going to shoot in, try to get him down, try to grind it out, kind of like Askren did to him, burn him out a little bit, and then ground and pound or submission. In order for Lima to win, he's got to crack that right here, break that nose again, get him panicked, get him feeling that basically how Robbie Lawler made him feel, where the pain and the recovery is not going to be worth the pay. You know, put him in that mindset and make him want to check out again.
Man, I'm a big fan of both of them. To be honest, I've been a fan of Rory and I've been a fan of Douglas, and I've always said, you know, if I fought at 170, I'd fight any dude except for Douglas. You know, that's a dude he's just a scary dude at that weight, and he's big. You know, and then you have Rory, who's huge at that weight. So I don't know, man. If Rory doesn't take him down or can't take him down, I think Douglas is going to give him a lot of problems with those leg kicks. And yeah, man, I don't know. I can't call it, but it's going to be a good fight. I'm definitely excited about watching it.
So this main event, Rampage Jackson versus Chael Sonnen in the first round of the Bellator heavyweight title tournament. Rampage, I understand he won't make the 205-pound weight limit anymore. Chael Sonnen's never fought at heavyweight, Joe. Despite, he would kind of just suspect he would fight anywhere and everywhere, and he would. He's never fought there, and when you all hear from him in a couple of minutes, he'll kind of express his uncertainties of fighting there. But, I'm kind of on Rampage's side with this. Why do you want a Rampage Jackson if you're going to put him against judokas and wrestlers all the time? Like, he used to have some pretty solid defensive wrestling. He doesn't anymore. Why?
They love Chael.
Of course, but
Rampage is a headache.
They just re-signed him. If he was that much of a headache, they didn't have to re-sign him.
You're bang on. But it is what it is right now, and that's what he's going to get. And if Chael is silly and stands and bangs with Rampage, he's going to lose his fight. Chael's smart, pisses him off, takes him down, and holds them there while trying to beat him. That is just the game plan. Now, I understand what you're saying. Why? Rampage against Fedor, Rampage against Miocic, Rampage against Mir, Rampage against Nelson. I like this Chael fight.
I would like it if both of them were facing somebody else. Eventually, sure. But if you have the option to pick who Rampage Jackson gets to fight, there's Miocic, Roy Nelson would probably try to press him up against the cage and do that. Roy Nelson likes to unpleasantly surprise people with how he fights. But you don't put him against Bader, King Mo, Chael Sonnen, in my opinion. Mir, Fedor, Nelson, Miocic, even Mir, just because of the size difference, maybe Mir tests it and stuff. And I do love the Mir Fedor booking. I think that's a great one. I actually like King Mo, Ryan Bader because of that styles clash. But I would not have done Nelson Miocic. I don't see any point of doing that one. You could have just switched that up. Nelson and Sonnen. Sure. See if Chael Sonnen can out-wrestle the big dude.
Beast. The big dude.
See if he can do it. See if Rampage Jackson can knock out Matt Miocic. I just think that's a much better move. How do you think this one goes? Do you think Chael out-wrestles him, or do you think that Rampage catches him? Because Rampage is a big dude now.
Yeah, Rampage is going to do whatever he can to knock Chael's head off the block. Let's be honest for a second, but I think Chael's going to be 1-2, just go back and watch the Vanderlei Silva, Chael Sonnen Ultimate Fighter clip. You see Chael putting his hands up and just fakes a 1-2, down for a takedown. And that's what he's going to try and do all the time with Rampage. I don't think he wants to sit there and stand and bang with Rampage and his power, those power left hooks or right hooks. The way I look at it, it's as surface level a breakdown as you're going to get from me. Rampage Jackson, knockout, Chael Sonnen, 3 rounds or 5 rounds or 18 rounds of just small brawl.
I love to get introspective and break these down from a technical standpoint, but it's really hard. Rampage, like I said, used to have this very impressive defensive wrestling and used to have this just amazing technical hook that he would throw and just killed people with it. It doesn't have it anymore. I don't want to say it doesn't have it anymore. It doesn't have that anymore. Somebody says they should have had Shane Carwin in this fight. Well, Shane Carwin should stop playing hokey pokey with MMA then, because I can't count the number of times in the last 2 years, or last year, since we launched this site, that he's wanted to come back, including with Ryzen, and it didn't happen. And he wanted to come back with the UFC, and obviously there's a reason he's not coming back to the UFC. I think the UFC knew as well. They were like, hey, you can't be juiced because USADA's going to come for you and you won't be fighting anywhere. Now, Chael Sonnen is pretty realistic about this upcoming fight, and he spoke to Fightful.com's James Lynch about it. Take a listen, guys, and always visit Fightful.com, FightfulMMA.com. James Lynch has interviews from everybody, from the top to the bottom of UFC cards. Check it out, guys.
Where it all started, I can't remember. Rampage said something, or I said something, and he responded, whatever it was. But it was enough heat for me to want to fight. But Yeah, Dana tried to get involved. He tried to make us the coaches of an Ultimate Fighter. We were going to do that match, and I can't remember what all happened, but it never came around. And then as far as it happening right now is, I mean, it's a tournament. You know, it doesn't really come from animosity. Neither will my next fight. You know, I just had somebody ask me, hey, if you beat Rampage, you're going to call out Fedor. But it doesn't work that way. This is a tournament. Rampage and I are on one side, Frank Mir and Fedor are on the other side of the bracket, and whoever advances, advances. So, yeah, any kind of animosity or personal grudge that I would have for a traditional style match, it has nothing to do with this. It's a tournament, and wherever the draws come, the draws come. I'm a tournament guy, man. I love that. You don't need to tell me. You don't even need to separate. I wish we were doing it all in one night.
Yeah, it is a really great idea, and I think it's definitely getting some excitement in that division. Now, Rampage has returned to Bellator. He hasn't fought that often, but he's had the 2 fights against Ishii and King Mo. What were your thoughts on sort of his performances in those fights with him coming back to Bellator?
I didn't get to see Ishii, but I used to train with him. I know he's a tough guy, so, you know, Rampage beating him meant something to me. And then the King Mo fight, you know, I did get to see that one. I was even the commentator for it. I've used that, like, when I watch some Rampage footage. That seems to be the fight that I keep going to because it was most recent. You know, Rampage is just a dangerous guy. He's a mean, rough, tough guy. He's big and strong. He's not a martial artist. He doesn't have belts and disciplines and all of that crap, and that's a compliment to him as far as I'm concerned. But he is a fighter, and he's got a fighter's heart. And I've seen him out there a few times where I thought, this guy doesn't look like he's in very good shape. But I've never seen him quit. You know, I've always seen him push through. He's always got one more big spurt in him. So, I mean, he's somebody I respect. He's a former world champion for a reason, but he's not me.
And as far as training camp, who have been some of your main training partners helping you get ready for Rampage?
I train at Gracie Baja in Portland. You know, to name drop some people that you would know, Paige Van Zandt. I've never sparred with Paige. I'm just dropping her name because I know you would recognize it, but you would know Ed Herman, who's been one of my longest teammates, Jake Smith, who's making his Bellator debut the week after I fight Rampage, Tyree Fortune, 18-1, also making his Bellator debut. It's probably the toughest team I've ever been part of. I mean, I could go on and on with who's there, but a lot of them haven't broke through yet. The best fighter I've ever seen is one of my teammates named Ricky Simone.
Won the LFA title. I'm very familiar with him, actually. Just beat Chico Camus. Title.
Yeah, and Chico's tougher than hell, you know, and Ricky's something special. So we got all the right bodies, but I don't know that I could impress you by just dropping their names right now like maybe I could. In the old day when I was at Team Quest, you know, we had 3 UFC champions in the room on any given day.
Well, it is interesting. You train with a lot of up-and-comers. One of them I also talked to was Austin Vanderford, who is coming off a win in Victory. How has that been, sort of being a mentor and coach to these up-and-coming fighters and seeing them sort of progress in their careers?
Yeah, and thanks for mentioning Austin. New teammate of mine. He came up in 2017, and he's so tough. He works so hard.
Great wrestler.
3 workouts. 3-4 workouts a day, every day, and we'll see how long he can hold that pace. But, you know, he's a young guy, and he's very motivated right now. You know, I don't see myself as that. I think you call me a mentor is probably a bigger compliment than I would give myself because I can remember my mentors, and I don't know if those guys look at me that way or not. But I just go through the process. You know, I just go in there and train every day. I do whatever the coach asks of me, and I go home. And my coach is a former teammate of mine, Fabiano Scherner. We were Team Quest teammates, and you know, he's known Rampage for a long time. He's been in there with Mir and Roy Nelson, and you know, he's great. So I'm with a new gym, but it's a lot like the old Team Quest days. You know, again, my former Team Quest teammate is now my head coach.
And how do you see this fight playing out on January 20th?
Well, you know, I don't think about the fight too much because you have to understand the big unknown for me, the part where I get, you know, apprehensive or my anxiety goes up is I never fought at heavyweight. And I've worked out with plenty of heavyweights, so I know what I'm getting into. Even in my wrestling days, my main workout partners, Eric Webb or Rich Polkinghorn, these guys were the heavyweights. I was the next biggest size, 197 pounds, but I never entered a tournament at heavyweight. So I don't know. You know, some of my techniques just flat don't work when you hit them on a guy that's that big. I've even found that in the practice room. I can hit my best techniques on a guy that's much less experienced than me. And some of those, you know, you got to go to plan B and plan C. So that's a little bit of an excitement too. You know, anytime you get into something that you haven't done before, I've been doing a lot of grappling lately, and it's just a different feel. There's a bit of an excitement to that unknown, bit of an excitement to that fear factor of what can happen. And So I don't know. As far as with Rampage, I can tell you this: I trained really hard. I'm in really good shape. I'm gonna push him. The second they say go, I will. And if he's got an answer for it, then God bless him.
Chael Sonnen being very, very transparent about his technique on heavyweights and stuff. Like, just saying there's so many times that he tries moves, like his best moves, and they don't work on bigger dudes, no matter who they are. So, very excited about that. Okay, I'm not excited about UFC 221, whatever the hell's from Perth. Robert
Say
Whittaker.
again?
I'm not excited for 221. Is that from Perth?
I think so.
Oh my god. Yeah, it's UFC 221 from Perth. Romero versus Rockhold is a fine fight. It is a bummer, but Robert Whittaker, I don't think was ever going to be ready for this fight. Like,
no.
I don't know what. There was nothing to indicate that he was going to be ready this early. Why? Why do it?
So a lot of this situation doesn't make sense, and listen, not everybody can have perfect planning, even the UFC, but having Romero on the Orlando card is fantastic. He's from Florida. He lives in Florida, be it South Beach, but there would have been a nice traveling contingent that would have went up to go see him and support him and get a lot of ticket sales. So putting him on that Orlando card was perfect. But pre-doing that, Rockhold, Whittaker, great fight. But we know Whittaker's injured. He's got a shoulder. Was it shoulder surgery or knee surgery? Mm-hmm. Or both? Like, that takes time to heal. I don't think he was ever going to be ready whatsoever. And that's why when the announcement was first made, I was kind of like, am I the only one doing the math here and thinking, I don't think he's going to be ready. It doesn't make sense, right? So, and now, it kind of backfired on both things. Now, I don't know what ticket sales are going to be like in Orlando for the UFC. I'm sure they'll be fine. I think they just may have lost a guaranteed sell. I think Romero would sell that place out, or at least sell enough tickets to push a sellout. But now he's got to go all the way halfway around the world, as does Rockhold. So both these guys have to travel from the U.S. all the way over to Australia to compete against one another. I mean, I'm sure we're going to expect an exciting fight, but it'd be much better somewhere where they only have to travel 3-4 hours maybe. So I don't know. It's just a weird booking scenario, and just weird how the dominoes fell the wrong way for the UFC on these two.
Yeah, I just don't think that Whittaker was going to be ready. His knee was wrecked pretty badly. Also, guys, if you all didn't see it, we have an interview up with Chris Cyborg talking the potential Amanda Nunes super fight. She says that Amanda Nunes wants to fight her because she's the money fight. I would agree, but I mean that's the point of this, Chris. And she's not as gung-ho against it as the guy who runs her social media is, but like when you're talking about bringing Pam Sorensen in to fight you, like Amanda Nunes has more wins at 145 than Sorensen does. So I don't know. Yeah. That's odd. We have a couple questions on the chat. Someone asked about your time at Sportsnet. Go check out Joe's appearance on the MMA Industry podcast in the archives at FightfulPods.com. He tells that story at great length. It is an awesome show. Definitely check that out on Thursday afternoons. It's James Lynch's MMA Industry podcast on Fightful.com. If you ever wanted to hear behind-the-scenes stories, it's great. Myself and Joe have just both been on it. Someone says, Sean, didn't Rampage get you into MMA? Yeah, well, I mean, he got me interested in MMA because I was into pro wrestling, and a family member showed me this video of a guy doing pro wrestling slams in MMA, and I was like, that's cool. I didn't know that you could do that. But then again, all I really knew before that was Big John Hess, so...
God, I think you've name dropped John Hess or mentioned John Hess the past 9 straight podcasts.
I'm trying to keep a streak going here. So we got UFC 220, and man, this is a very, very top heavy card. Like, there's some okay stuff. Like Dustin Ortiz is on the show. That's a top 15 fight. Al Hassan against Homasi. Got to do that one again. Okay, sure. That'll be fun because it was fun last time. Marina Moroz is on this show as well. Gleison Tebow is back. What on this preliminary card are you looking forward to, Joe?
Can I ask you 2 quick questions first?
Yes.
Just Chael Sonnen, Quentin Jackson. Chael Sonnen plus 145, Quentin Jackson minus 155. What... I think those are fair. Rampage a slight favorite because he's a bigger guy. You like?
Yeah, I do. I do like that. I think that's fair. We do need to pull up the odds for these and talk.
I got
those.
them. Yeah, I got them.
What are the Bellator lines right now for?
That's the only one.
That's the only one they made.
Yeah, right now that's the only one made on about 12 different sites. So, I mean, as we get closer to the 20th, to Saturday, we'll probably see more. They've got to do something with Rory MacDonald, Douglas Lima, and of course Chandler's fight. So, second question for you: did you have a chance to watch Jessica Kalindra Faria? I'm going to say probably yes because you were tweeting.
Yes, and I did a post show. You guys can check that out. Sorry that my stream cut out in the middle of it, but those are the breaks. The full show is now up on Fightful.com, FightfulPods.com, and our YouTube. Subscribe, like, thumbs up.
What was your take on Jessica's post-fight interview?
That was one of the dumbest post-fight interviews I have ever heard, and I mean, let's be quite frank. It doesn't surprise me.
Okay.
It just doesn't. She's a different cookie, that girl.
Okay. I
don't want to say she's dumb. I'm just saying she's different. The interview was dumb, but I'm not saying that it didn't surprise me because she's dumb. It didn't surprise me because she's just different, man. She's different.
Yeah. I'm only going to say that because the very first time when she made her UFC debut, I had a chance to interview her. I'm going to think it was Seattle. I'm trying to remember the location. I think it was Seattle. And when she sat down and spoke to me, I was like, "Wow, what a nice girl, what a sweetheart." And she's got her head down, and everything is smart and blah blah. And got it down pat. We aired it on the network, blah blah blah. We did a feature on her, and everything was nice and stuff like that. And then every single time thereafter, I'm like, who is this? Who is this person that was a completely different human being when I had half an hour with her, with my team interviewing her? Who is this? And the more I see
how far into her UFC career was that?
Her debut.
That's why.
It was her debut. So I'm going to go
look at her. She should have been 1-6 going into this fight, because I thought that she lost the Kaufman fight, even though it got overturned because of the marijuana, which was BS. The majority of the media fan scores had it for Kaufman. She should have been 1-6 in the UFC going into this fight. And she did fight at 135, and that was just the thing I always heard. Well, it's because she's at 135. It's because she's at 135. Well, I'm glad that she got this win at flyweight, because I'm ready to see something from her. And she's talking like, nobody wants to see you punch. You know how many UFC bonuses she has? None.
I didn't know what to think when she said that. I remember looking at that. So I'm watching it on my brand new freaking awesome iPad, and I'm sitting there going, what in the hell did she just say? Nobody wants to see people punching and kicking. They want to see you wrestle. And I was just like, what planet are you on? Are you insane? Like, no. That's not what people want.
That Penn State show that Bellator ran, maybe.
Right?
Would have erupted.
Sure. Yeah, but and then just some of the stuff afterwards, and I'm thinking Sean Ross Sapp is going to renew one in this post-fight podcast because she's 1-6, or she hasn't won a fight. It's her first win in 4 fights. What? Title? What? So I was like, am I the only person thinking this? I mean, there's got to be, you can't tell a grown adult sometimes what to say and how to say it, but someone's got to sit her down and be like, look, the minute you get in front of that microphone in a post-fight interview, here's what we advise. Here's how you can make more money. Here's how you can get fights. Here's blah, blah, blah. Because I was just like, like that woman that I interviewed felt like it was a bubble within a much larger bubble of truth. You know what? Like, it was just like, okay, cool. You put it on for the camera. And that was a different person. Anyways.
She's been fighting, like, losing her job for a long time. Like, there was a real case for her to probably get canned after Pena. And not only that, like, they gave her Sarah McMahon And then they're like,
Yeah.
okay, well, we'll give you Betch Kohea, who has a name but isn't good. Like, Betch just isn't good. And then she took a year off. They started this division. Glad she got her win because I don't want to see anybody lose their job or anything like that. So I'm glad she kind of preserved it. And the flyweight division needs somebody like her. So
Yeah, nothing. By the way, nothing against her. Nothing against Jessica. By all means. Like, I hope
it was just weird, man. It was
all
weird
the success
thing
in the world,
to say.
man. But okay, cool.
Maybe
UFC
she's
220.
working us. Who knows?
Oh, see, there's the pro wrestling side in Sean Ross Sapp that knows a thing or two about certain situations. But UFC 220, anything on this card you asked me that sticks out for me?
The prelims, especially the prelims.
Yeah, they do. I mean, Makachev and Tebow to kick things off. That's a sick fight. I mean, that's a damn good fight. Moroz and Moyle, that's a fun fight.
Tebow, or the old Teabag, as I call him.
Jesus.
He should. I mean, the thing is, T-Bow is the dude's nickname. If you can't nickname yourself T-Bag and then do the motion in the ring while Bruce Buffer's calling your name, what are you even doing here, bro? What are you even doing here? You're 34. Yeah. You're not a household name. You need to make yourself a household name. He has been in the UFC, Joe, since 2006.
Been around.
He had... Of course, there was that one fight he had in Nordest Combat Championship back when the UFC just used to let their guys fight elsewhere, which was weird. But, my God, man, and he's had that USADA suspension. And is he the first person that we've seen come back after 2 years?
No.
Who else?
I'm thinking, no, Chad Mendes hasn't.
No. But also...
A female fighter came back? No.
You got to look at all the people that he's beaten, and
you might be correct, Sean.
The thing is, he's beaten some guys that weren't at their prime. Like he's beaten Jeremy Stevens and Rafael Dos Anjos, but most of his recent runs, well, Francisco Trinaldo's a good one, but even then, that was 5-6 years ago. He hasn't won a fight in 3 years. 2 of those was because he was out of action. Otherwise, he'd still be fighting 2 or 3 times a year. I'm very, very interested to see how Gleison Tebow looks in this fight, and they are not giving him an easy fight. They're giving him a guy. Yeah.
No.
They're like, hey, welcome back. You got a guy who's 14-1. Have fun with that.
Yeah, that's going to be. Damn it! I have to watch it live, don't I, Sean? All right. Yes, I'll endeavor to be home Saturday early to make sure we watch that. With that starting at 6:30, I'm assuming. Yeah, 6:30, 3 fights, 6:30 Eastern. All right, we'll be home to watch it. But that's pretty much. I mean, I'm interested in Danny Ige's fight against Julio Arce because Ige. I've called Ige's fight in Titan before he moved on to Dana White's Contender Series and then over to the UFC. That dude's he's the guy you call up on a hey man, what are you doing on Saturday? I got to lift some bricks and some wood in the backyard. I'm thinking of building a deck. Can you call Glover Teixeira as well and come by? Danny will be there, man. Dan will be there in a heartbeat. He's just that guy.
Arce is a good fighter. He's only lost to Brian Kelleher. That's a good one. I think that's one that people need to watch out for. Al Hassan and Homasi, I can't believe they didn't put that on the main card over Qatar and Burgos. That's curious.
Why? Right? Should be, but those are 2 guys that deserve a bit more. Now, so it always begs the question, are you getting more exposure on a Fox Sports 1 prelim card, or are you getting more exposure on the pay-per-view?
I think you're getting more on the pay-per-view on this show.
You need to be on that. Those 2 guys need to be on that pay-per-view.
Especially with the effort that they put forth last time.
Yeah.
Right? I really think that they should be on that show. And also
put them as the main event for the prelim card, so that drives pay-per-view sales.
Yeah, what is a Bochniak and Brandon Davis? What is that? I don't know what that is. A featherweight fight I probably wouldn't put as that prelim headliner. I would have put Moroz or the Tebow fight there over both of those. I would have put this flyweight fight on over both of those because that's a good flyweight fight.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're bang on. It's a weird looking scenario, and I mean, who the hell are we to say what the UFC is doing? They're a multi-billion-dollar company for a reason. Just suggestions, but Me disagree. Almeida Font to kick things off on the main card is going to be a ridiculous tilt. And taking a look at the, I'm going to pull up the numbers here. 1 second here. We are looking at, very close. Minus 120 for Thomas, plus 100 for Rob. I can buy that.
Think Font needs to be a little bit bold in this fight.
Well, against Almeida, you're not going to have a choice. You get your head knocked off, right? I got it. Rob, bold, font, not italics or underline. Got it.
Oh, God. You burned my underline joke. I said I was going to say I want to underline something here, but you screwed it up for me. Rob Font.
Sound effects, man. We need sound effects here. Either you and I with sound effects would be fantastic. Go ahead.
Rob Font started off 4-1 in his UFC career. He's ran into problems with Lineker and Munoz. When he fights these top 10, top 15 talents, he has ran into trouble. And that's what makes me question the fight with Dustin Ortiz because, here's the thing. I don't know if Dustin Ortiz is a top 10, top 15 talent because he's one of those guys, Joe, that came into the UFC back when, when they started this division and you're like, all right, because we didn't know who the best flyweight in the world really was at that point.
Back then, yeah.
Because you had, people it could have been Alexis Villa if he dropped down. It could have been, Dustin Ortiz. It could have been any number of people. And since Dustin Ortiz got to the UFC, he's just had such a big problem against him. For him, it's been against, a lot of top 5, top 10 guys. But then again, he's almost like the Michael Johnson of this division. He'll beat Ray Borg and Justin Scoggins and Zach Makovsky. But then he's losing to Moraga, McCall, Formiga, Wilson Hayes, Brandon Moreno. I think that calling him the Michael Johnson of this division is kind of fair because, we've seen him finish Willie Gates in the last round. We've seen him finish Hector Sandoval in his last fight, 15 seconds in. Got his first bonus, too. Alexandre is a little bit, well, not a little bit, he's way more consistent. Hasn't lost a fight in 7.5 years, I think. So this could be a statement fight for him over Dustin Ortiz and really could catapult him into the top 10 in the division. Yeah.
You kind of made me sad about Michael Johnson bringing up his name because we didn't talk about him, and I'm super sad that I'm happy for Elkins for pulling off that rear naked choke victory, but I'm sad for Michael because the dude's just so cool. He has his moments, but every time I see him in Florida, we're just shooting the breeze, man. I wish him the best, but don't know why he caught himself in that situation and submitted like that. It breaks my heart. But
there are so many people that are that have one win in their last 6 fights that I'd be like, you need to retire. I don't think he needs to retire. He's hanging in there with some of the best people in the world. He put Khabib Nurmagomedov in more trouble than anybody has so far. So,
yeah. Do you think the UFC commentating team was strategic when they were talking about Johnson's record and strategically did not say he has a victory over current UFC interim lightweight champion Tony Ferguson?
Now, what was that again? Sorry, repeat.
When they were talking about Michael Johnson's record and he has wins over blah, 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 they strategically did not state, in my opinion, they strategically did not state Tony Ferguson, who just so happens to be the UFC interim champ.
I don't know.
I think it was done on purpose.
Really?
Yep, I think it was done on purpose. There's certain ways to promote a guy, and there's certain ways to just be like, it's a little bit safe here. I could be wrong, right? I'm just throwing it out there.
I think that's fair. So this main card is, the first 3 fights.
Yeah. Vellante, John Vellante, it's Chris Weidman's training partner, and we've heard how Chris has said he's the best light heavyweight, ever in the world. No, he's not. He's not. And, so first things first, I think Barroso's going to win this fight. Correct me if I'm wrong. Barroso's I know he's an underdog here. He's plus 150. I just don't, John Vellante to me is just kind of like, I've heard so much, but you've never done it.
This isn't a main card fight to me on pay-per-view. You've got 2 guys that have won 1 fight in their last 4. Both of them. And, I thought, Vellante had a nice streak there where he won 3 of 4, and he kind of finished off Anthony Perosh, and he beat Corey Anderson, and that's it. That's it. He's fallen out of that top 15, and Barroso is just, come on, man. It's just not a main card fight. And I hate when they throw that on there just under the guys like, oh, one of these guys could be in the top 15. Neither of them belong near it right now.
No.
John Vellante hovered in and out of it for a little while, but it's just not a main card fight.
Correct. Negative. So, I mean, it's to me, it's not even want to talk about it. It's not even worth breaking down. And Calvin Kattar versus Shane Burgos, like,
who?
Huh? Yeah.
Who?
That's what it is. I mean, how many people are going to be drinking and doing other things, in my opinion, watching this pay-per-view until the co-main event starts?
That's why, like, if Bellator gets their stuff in at the right time, like, they could time it out perfect, because there are going to be people who buy this pay-per-view who aren't going to watch the first 3 fights. But boy, do we have some fun coming on those first 2. And let's go ahead. I'll give you all the pros picks for the Daniel Cormier Volkan Oezdemir fight.
I mean, they're both good fighters. You know, Daniel DC is an amazing fighter. You know, he's a champ for a reason. You know, the other guy with the Volkan, as I said, I mean, he's a super tough guy, man. You know, he's had an amazing fight too. So, you know, you never know, man. It's a fight. Anything can happen, and we'll see. I'm not a good, picker. I hate picking on people. You know, I knew who I want to win, but I'm not gonna say.
Cormier. You know, Cormier's fought guys like him time and time again. A better striker was Rumble Johnson, and he saw what Cormier did to him. And I think it's going to be the same scenario. I believe Cormier is going to go out there and finish him.
Oh, man, DC, baby, let's go. That's my boy, man. DC is the man. I think he's going to just wreck Volkan, man. It's not even going to be competitive, man. He's going to show the different levels of this sport, man. That's what there is in this sport. There's different levels. DC is going to thrash Volkan.
I like Oezdemir. I do. I doubted him against Jimmy Manawa. He proved me wrong, and I'm not going to do that again. I think he's very explosive, and he's got the classic, like, he got the stand up. He can do all the movements, all the punches, all the combinations. I think he's got all that, and I think he's athletic. And I think DC, he's always a smaller guy, but I think this might be his most aggressive opponent. I don't think John Jones or Gustafsson, they were as aggressive as Oezdemir has been in his past few fights.
I'm going with DC. I fought with DC on the same card as DC last time, and I got to go with DC again. He's beaten everybody that's not named John Jones. The dude, he beats them all. He finishes them all. He's a great fighter. So I think he'll be a little bit too much with his pressure and his wrestling for Oezdemir, but Oezdemir hits like a freaking truck, so you never know.
I like Volkan. I like him a lot because I saw he was he was supposed to fight for Titan FC, and then he got that call to the UFC, and then I think he's on the 3-fight win streak with like all knockouts in like under a minute, something crazy like that, and he's already got himself a title fight. I think that's awesome, but I don't think he's ever fought a wrestler like Cormier. And I think that Cormier is going to be able to take his shots, and be able to take him down and just beat him up. So I'm gonna, if I had to put money on it, I'm gonna put money on Cormier. But I think I'm gonna be probably rooting for Stipe, or no, rooting for No Time, Volkan. Yeah.
I'm gonna take Cormier. It's hard to, anybody but John Jones. You got to take DC.
Oh, it's another tough one. Being fans of both guys and knowing both guys, it's really hard for me to choose that one. I mean, that's another fight where I get to sit back and just kind of enjoy it, just like everyone else.
Oh, that one, it's tricky. Who knows? Like that Volkan is just touching people and people are going down. So, I mean, it'll be very impressive if Volkan does it, but I still think Cormier, because Cormier, it's a warrior and he can take a lot, but who knows, man? That Volkan seems like unreal. Like, he touches people and people go down. So, but I still think Cormier, though.
Daniel Cormier versus Volkan Oezdemir, the UFC Light Heavyweight Championship. I can't wait for this. Daniel Cormier often fights in a phone booth. Volkan Oezdemir has been fighting in bars, apparently. So there you go with that one. I see a lot of striking similarities between Oezdemir and Stipe Miocic, of all people, Joe. He's able to land knockout shots from short range without a lot of power generated, off balance. Like, their knockout power really knows no bounds. Like, we saw Miocic, which I'll get into it, knock a guy out moving forward. We've seen Oezdemir knock a guy out by, like, flicking his earlobe. Like, it's kind of miraculous. And Daniel Cormier he's what to watch here because he can be as good as he wants to be. Now, on the feet, I would avoid that if I'm Daniel Cormier because he has to rely on his overhand so much. He does fight inside a phone booth. As I mentioned, he'll put the hand on the back of an opponent's head, makes them cover distance. But the thing is, Joe, Volkan Oezdemir doesn't have to cover distance. And if you sit there with your hand on the back of Oezdemir's head, he's going to put his on your chin, and that's it. That's just it.
I don't think Volkan's going to be or should be very aggressive with his striking in terms of moving forward too quickly because Daniel will be more than happy to meet him halfway and take him down on the ground. That's what Daniel's going to do. I think the correct thing for Volkan to do is to play the distance game, play the reach advantage, or at least use his reach in a manner that has him sticking and moving and playing the triangle if necessary, not sitting there and being where Daniel is because Daniel will throw kicks. Daniel's got to be smart as well. He can't walk in there and say, you know what, I took everything Anthony Rumble Johnson had and I still stood up and I beat him. I'm not saying that Volkan has the power that Anthony Rumble Johnson has, but we don't really know how much power he actually does have other than what we've seen thus far, and it's freaking fantastic. Because if he knocks out Daniel Cormier the way he's done the past fighters, we have ourselves a situation with a brand new champion. So I'm looking at the dynamics here and thinking to myself, Oezdemir, although he's a massive, not a massive underdog, he's a significant underdog at plus 260. Daniel's a minus almost 300 favorite. Some sites have him at minus 350. So he's a favorite for a reason, and I think we're likely going to see why he's the favorite in this fight here. I don't think any pressure is on Volkan Oezdemir in this fight. All the pressure's on DC in this fight. DC doesn't care. Let's be honest, Sean. He's the champion. He knows he's got a job to do. Get rid of that top contender because 3 years from now, he's not going to beat Oezdemir, in my opinion.
I'm with you, and there are so many technical things that Daniel Cormier does so well that involve that high-level wrestling. Like, he capitalizes on every slip. Like, when Anthony Rumble Johnson would slip and fall, a lot of people were curious as to why Rumble Johnson was wrestling in that first fight. It's because he had to resort to it because Daniel Cormier was so quick with the back take. And a back take from Daniel Cormier isn't like most people. He's not going to throw in like a body triangle or hooks. He'll probably force you over into a turtle position and throw uppercuts underneath the arm, or he'll do that thing where he has this outstanding hip control from there where either you go flat down on your face or you're eating punches. But either way, you're probably not getting up unless you have some sort of superhuman balance or you're John Jones. He's that balance is something he's a real master at. His positional wrestling, he conserves energy in such a great manner. Like when he's up against the cage and he's wrestling somebody and he drops down and it doesn't work, instead of lifting up on somebody and spending energy, he will slide his leg through and go around back and then do a waist lock. And that's like, that. Not only is that super valuable for him to save energy, it's super valuable to make somebody else carry your own weight in that situation. And that's just the little things that a Daniel Cormier and his wrestling pedigree bring that just normal MMA wrestling training can't necessarily bring you all the time. And that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm looking to see is, does he still have that? Is that going to still be here? Because, it's at this point, we've seen in the past, here's what you got to think of, Joe. Think about his last few fights. Think of Daniel Cormier's last few fights, really. John Jones, he lost. Anthony Rumble Johnson was not beating him that day in that mindset. You were there live. You saw it. You covered it for us. Anthony Rumble Johnson probably isn't beating John Vellante on that day. And no disrespect to John Vellante, Rumble was gone. He was checked out. He was cooked. Before that, Daniel Cormier's fight is Anderson Silva. Well, okay, that was last minute. Before that was Alexander Gustafsson, and that was the last win of Daniel Cormier's that I look at, and I go, okay, that one meant something. And even, I think Gustafsson got that coming off of a loss, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
My God. And so then as I start to look at these, I put a lot of this stuff into question. But man, the thing is, I put some of it into question, but you can't beat all those guys under any set of those circumstances back to back to back to back without being great.
Listen, that loss that he had his last fight versus John Jones, he was beginning to win that fight. It was a very competitive fight. It was looking absolutely fantastic. Then he just simply got caught. John timed that high kick properly. It landed. It's a baseball bat. It's a shin bone, a.k.a. a baseball bat to your skull. 9 times out of 10, in that type of situation, you're getting knocked out. You're getting hurt. You're getting rocked. Daniel Cormier ate it, lost, didn't realize what the hell was going on afterwards. We all remember that. But in that fight, he was doing absolutely, I think he was doing fantastic. And in doing fantastic versus John Jones says a lot. And he's still not, and now he's the champ. It's all good. And now he's not, it's not like we're looking at a fighter who's over the hill. He's not. Father Time will catch up to him. That's a damn fact. Father Time will catch up to him. But right now, he's looking damn good. And I think there's a reason why he's the favorite here. Oezdemir can prove a lot of people right and wrong in this fight here, no matter what. But if he does emerge victorious, especially with a knockout or a TKO, holy smokes, like this kid's something else.
It's the great unknown, and I like it. That's what I really, really like. Also, the great unknown is Stipe Miocic, Francis Ngannou. Take a look at the pros picks, my friends.
My boy Stipe, man. Stipe is a good buddy of mine. Very tough. He's champion for a reason. But the thing is that, you know, Francis, if he hits you with that one hand, as you saw with Overeem, it's over. He's a very, very big heavyweight. Both of them are big boys. But when you stand next to Stipe and then stand next to Francis, there's a huge difference. But I'm going with my boy Stipe.
Yeah, there's money to be made there. I don't think there's anything to see. I think that Stipe gets him out of there, and he probably gets him out of there in the first round. I am intrigued by it, and I will tell you, of anyone that I know that predicts fights, nobody's worse at it than me. So if I tell you it's Stipe, you might want to get some money out and put it on Ngannou, but I really feel that way. There's a bunch of question marks around Ngannou. Excuse me. He rose up really fast. He doesn't have that experience. I think that experience is a little overrated, so maybe I shouldn't hang my hat on that. There is something to being fresh. There is something to being naive, not knowing what you don't know. Daryl, nobody. Sorry, my little maniac just came in. He grabbed the cord. If he pulls that out, I'm going to lose you. Are you trying to get in this interview, boy? Huh? Are you trying to get in this interview? All right. And he's actually being quiet, so I thought it would be okay with you if I brought him in on this one. Thanks, pal. I just got Stipe, man. Stipe's a stone cold killer. I don't really get it. I don't really get how anybody could disrespect him and say someone's going to go out there and roll over Stipe. Nobody ever has, and you're going to act like this unknown guy is the one to do it, man. That's a tough sell for me.
Oh, man, that's a tough fight to pick, but I got to go with Stipe, man. He's got more well-rounded set. You know, he could take down Ngannou. He can mix up everything, and Ngannou's going to have to think about takedowns because Stipe presents that challenge. So I think Stipe is going to get done, regardless of what the odds makers say.
I mean, I can see that, like, a lot of the casual and a lot of MMA fans, they fall in love with the uppercuts and the overhands. They fall in love with that. But I believe Stipe's like classic boxing and his movement, his angles, and his cardio. We haven't seen Ngannou go into deep waters, really. So, and I think if Stipe gets him out of the second round, I think it's his fight.
Oh, I'm pumped for that, man. That got me so much more excited for this card. That's another fight. You got heavyweights, man. You got two heavy hitters, especially Ngannou, who he broke the world record for the strongest punch or something like that, right? So if he touches you, yeah, I don't see him. I don't see him hitting anybody. If he hits somebody clean, I think anybody goes to sleep. So if he lands on Stipe, Ngannou wins. If he lands early, I'm gonna lean towards Stipe though. I think his wrestling, he's gonna use his wrestling. If he uses his wrestling, I think he will win. I think he's by let's say TKO.
Stipe's got it, man. This is the fight that Stipe's been waiting for to really shoot him into stardom. You know, he's the man. He's like a firefighter in Cleveland, just a stand-up guy, and I know he's got ties with like Weidman, and I'm hoping that I know Volante was just out in Cleveland training with Stipe, and I'm hoping that Stipe, I'll be able to see him before that fight. That'd be so cool. But I'm gonna be rooting for Stipe, and I think once he goes in there and beats Ngannou, that's really gonna, and I think that'll break the record for heavyweight, right? Heavyweight defenses. That's gonna make him one of the best heavyweights to walk this planet. You know.
You got to go with Ngannou just because of what he's. It's hard to pick against the champion, but Ngannou looks like he's just like built in a little pod at the Performance Institute. So he's a perfect heavyweight.
Once again, going with the American in this one. I mean, Stipe's been proving himself time and time again as being one of the best heavyweights out there, and I see him going out there and getting another knockout over Ngannou.
I think actually Stipe, because not many people remember, but Stipe is actually a good wrestler, so you could try like mix it up and maybe take him down and have the bet on the ground and tear him up, and then when Ngannou's not that fresh and he doesn't have that power anymore, maybe he can pull it. So. Maybe I can see Stipe.
Stipe, he's got the gas tank. He's a very intelligent fighter. I'd like to see him move a lot and wear down Francis. If Francis hits him with that uppercut, oh man, his head's gonna fly through the roof just like anybody else. So the earlier rounds, I'm gonna go with Francis, and if Stipe can just be smart and fight technical and move a lot, and put his cardio to use, then he can even win by knockout as well in the later rounds. I think 3rd, 4th, and 5th.
UFC 220, Francis Ngannou against Stipe Miocic. I felt like in the weeks leading up to this, a lot of people were almost writing off Stipe, like they knew that he was going to lose and things like that. But I mean, there are a lot of tools that he has beyond Francis Ngannou's incredible knockout power that could play to his favor. Now, to that, I've also heard a lot of people say, well, the UFC wants Miocic to lose. He even says it too, but Ngannou, while some people can't understand, his English isn't perfect yet. He's got the dialect and stuff. Stipe Miocic doesn't exactly go out of his way to make himself a superstar, Joe. Like, I was very lucky to salvage 1 or 2 quotes from an interview he did with James Lynch, and James Lynch is one of the best interviewers in the game. But every time that Miocic says something, I don't care about that stuff, I don't pay any attention to that, I don't look to that, I don't do this, I don't know. I'm like, bro, why are you doing the interview? What's the point? Like, so I don't think there's like some big mass like conspiracy for Francis Ngannou to beat Stipe Miocic. He's just the best option to fight him. And that's what we have here. And I'm very much looking forward to this, especially Miocic's counter strikes, because they're more reactionary than they are like a game plan. Like, I see them more of him looking at what a Alistair Overeem or anybody else does, as opposed to like the Greg Jackson style of coming back to the corner and being like, okay, well, you got to lean this way and then parry and then throw it and make sure you put this much into it. With Miocic, he just sees what you're doing and he reacts to it and usually ends up putting your lights out.
Yeah, I think he's fantastic in terms of his interview and his comments. I think I only had a chance to interview him twice, and they were pretty good interviews. And what I learned with Stipe, and unfortunately for James Lynch, is you got to be in front of Stipe. Stipe needs that personal interaction and he needs that pre-conversation before you commence the interview for him to really break down that wall of I don't care about this and I'm guarded and I got to watch what I say. I don't want to make headlines and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, he hasn't gone out of his way, Rory MacDonald, to do anything where the UFC is basically, yeah, this guy's the man. He hasn't. He just simply hasn't. He just, he's a blue-collar guy. He goes back to being a fireman or does whatever he wants around the house. He talked about having to put in a new kitchen and stuff like that. That's all he cares about. Doesn't care. I mean, Cain Velasquez flat out in an interview with me said, I hate doing media.
Yeah.
And then realized that's fine, but it's the media that makes people watch you and the awareness surrounding you. And when there's more awareness around you, there are sponsors that want a piece of that awareness. You want to go back into your home, your man cave, and just live your life there until you have to come out and fight. You ain't getting paid. At the end of your career, when you look at that bank account, coulda, shoulda, woulda, it ain't going to be pretty. So in Francis Ngannou, the UFC now has a guy that's basically knocking people's head off, is very exciting, scares the bejesus, aka Mike Tyson, out of people, okay? And has a guy that, even though his English isn't that great, will talk, will speak, will offer his opinion, doesn't care what you think, isn't exactly media honed, isn't media trained, isn't media savvy. He's just going to say what he wants to say. So if the UFC had a choice to which champion they would want right now, they'll go with Francis Ngannou. I think there'd be almost a unanimous vote on that board to say we'd love to have this guy as our champion. Not because Stipe Miocic is a bad guy. He's not a bad guy. He's just not as good, in my opinion, for business as Francis Ngannou is. Bottom line is, Sean, the UFC heavyweight champion, in our eyes, or at least in my eyes, and most people's eyes, is officially the baddest man on the planet.
I was going to say, it's the battle for that. And
right? Like, one of these two guys will be crowned that. Take nothing away from Joshua, who's a fantastic fighter. He's just not the baddest man on the planet.
Too, yeah.
Yeah, but they're boxers. They're not fighters, per se, right? So if you want to be the baddest man on the planet and you want that label, that's awesome. But, man.
And Miocic can make history here. If he wins this, then do you crown him as the greatest heavyweight ever? Or even in the UFC? I mean, because there's still going to be some doubt in people's eyes. There's always going to be doubt in somebody's eyes. But
Junior Dos Santos. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, you're going to do it. Go. Well, Junior Dos Santos, Alistair Overeem, Fabrizio Verdum, Andre Arlovsky, Mark Hunt. So he avenged that loss to Junior Dos Santos, Fabio Maldonado, Gabriel Gonzaga, Roy Nelson. These are all wins. He lost to Stefan Struve, Shane Dozario. He beat DeFries. Okay, so who on that would we want to say you still need to fight blah, blah, blah before Kane? Right?
Kane can't get in the cage, so whose fault is that? Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, you can make that argument. Do you want to go back and look at Fedor's record when he did his stuff in Pride?
And, again, you always put an asterisk next to anybody that was really before a certain time as well. Let's talk about the technical aspect of this fight. Like, the lasting image that we have of Ngannou is him just knocking Alistair Overeem dead. And I think Overeem almost tried to counter a counter of Ngannou. You saw him go under, and he got so low that when he came back up, I don't think that he was ready for Ngannou to follow up with the left. And when you throw that right hook or right uppercut and you switch to the left, that's a natural motion for your body. Like, it's going to come back around that way. And the amount of force that he gets from a natural motion, like underhand, is just unbelievable. Overeem knew the uppercut was coming. That's the thing. Like, he got out of the way of it, and he just ran right into another one. And it's just...
Well, that helped the momentum, right?
Hell yeah. Oh, yeah. That helped the momentum because you had Overeem
because he was doing right into it. He was doing this and then decided to, oh, God, it's coming. And then as his head was moving back...
Now, to the contrary, Miocic doesn't rely on momentum or range or power or his legs or anything for his knockout power. Like, he lands them at very awkward angles sometimes, or on the ground he does it. A lot of people insinuate that maybe retreating from Ngannou and fighting maybe at range or popping in and out would be a good idea. I don't think so. I think that just allows Ngannou to generate more power and gives him a little more space to do that. And we know that he's able to do that. Wearing Ngannou down is the tactic that I will be interested in seeing, because we've seen Ngannou taken down, but even when he did, he was really good at scrambling, getting in underhooks, things like that against Curtis Blades. Curtis Blades is a real good wrestler. And he's going to be a guy that we see in that UFC heavyweight division top 10. I think for the next 6-7 years, Curtis Blades is in that top, if not longer. It's more about Ngannou's output in these situations than it is about Stipe staying on top of him, because I think that Stipe knows that it might be a battle to stay on top of Ngannou. And Stipe's never been the guy to just try to lay on top of you. He tries to finish you from there. So that's what I'm most excited to see. But Blades couldn't even create space and land strikes on the ground because Ngannou immediately worked back up. And that's something that Stipe does very often.
I listen. Your assessment that he needs to break down and wear down Ngannou, to me, is game plan number one. Stick to it. Do not get into a firefight with this guy. Yes, you have the power. Yes, you fought guys that also have had that power, and you've proved it on numerous occasions. Perhaps this time you don't want to do that. Perhaps this time we want to keep our energy output to a certain level and punish this guy. Let him move. He's going to stalk you no matter what. Let him stalk you, counter, get out, counter, get out, counter, get out, leg kicks. Punish him, but don't try and finish him. Let's carry him into deep water to see how he reacts. Then our stamina, our cardio will be more than enough to finish this guy off, because we've gone 5 rounds. I mean, that 5-round fight with Junior Dos Santos was retarded. That was incredibly awesome. Okay? We have it, but we don't want to get punched in the face by Ngannou. Although everyone in the heavyweight division has power, Ngannou appears to have crazy-ass power. So let's do this strategically. We don't have to win by knockout. We don't have to win by – we just have to win 3 rounds out of 5, okay? And guess what? If the submission is there, you're damn right you go for it. Punish this guy. You have to put him – Big John McCarthy and I used to talk about this all the time, Sean. Put your opponent in a position where he's consistently defensive. He has to be on the defense. And you do that not necessarily standing up when you're aggressive, but if you're on top when you're on the ground. I don't know that I'd be overly concerned with Ngannou's submissions right now. You put this guy on all 4s, or you put him on his back if possible, and you break him down. You wear him down. You know, the carrying of the weight thing, I don't know about that, because, you know, you can clinch with Ngannou, Sean, and put him up against the cage. The dude's big, man. The dude's strong. I think he could shuck and buck Miocic if he wanted to, right? But put your arms on top of his arms. I mean, that's what George St. Pierre did with the BJ Penn. BJ was having to carry all that weight, lifting up with the underhooks all the time. That is taxing on your shoulders. Okay, we all know that scientifically. That's proven in MMA. If you do that, you'll tire out your opponent later on. So I think you're bang on. I think Stipe needs to fatigue Ngannou, do his thing, and then if the finish presents itself at any one point, sure, but carry him into the 3rd round, championship rounds if need be.
And one of the talking points has been, even Miocic saying it, like, everybody talks about how hard of a puncher Ngannou is, but I've faced hard punchers, he says. You haven't faced world record holder level. I mean, I'm sorry, Francis Ngannou is a different specimen, a different being, and I can't imagine being more excited for a fight than I am this one. Like, these top 2 fights, I just think are wonderful matchups, and of course we have live coverage and discussion over at Fightful.com. If you're watching the fights on Saturday night, you want to talk to people about the fights during the show, head over to Fightful.com, FightfulMMA.com, and myself and Showdown Joe will be here right after UFC 220 to talk about that and Bellator 192. It's going to be a good time. You all can subscribe to us, iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Player FM. I think we're on Spotify, Google Play as well, a little bit of everything. You can follow Joe at Showdown Joe. Follow me at Sean Ross Sapp. Follow us at Fightful Online. That's cross-platform. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We have individual Twitters at Fightful Wrestle and Fightful MMA. Guys, thank you for joining us for the preview show. Make sure you all visit us and check out our exclusives too, because we have stuff every single day at Fightful.com that you can only find at Fightful.com. Until next time, we are out.